Hello everyone and welcome to Voxel Viewpoint, the show where everything is made up and the points don't matter. We have a mega texture of an episode today that we kick off with a surprise info dump about what the next PlayStation console will look like. Leigh and Derrick then talk about the under-the-radar, Left 4 Dead-like World War Z. Then we wrap it up with our replay of 2011's Rage. It's April 23rd, 2019. I'm Ryan Shepard, and this podcast will be 100% backwards compatible. Hello everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Ryan Shepard. Today we've got Leigh and Derrick.
Hi. How's it
on
going?
The cast. We've got a big show ahead of us. We haven't been on for a couple weeks here, so we've got some things to cover. We're going to kick it off with Derrick has been playing Super Dragon Ball Heroes. Derrick, why don't you tell us a little bit about that game and what makes it so cool?
Okay, so this is the new Dragon Ball Z card type game for the Switch. It was originally a Japanese arcade game where you would go out and you would collect these cards and then kind of set them. I guess they had like a magnet or something in them or an NFC chip, and you could set it down and then it would load into the arcade game, and then you played the card game like this. So this is a Switch adaptation of it. And it still like carries over a lot of the arcade elements. Like you'll have to use your joysticks for stuff. It has a bunch of little like mini events that'll happen. So it's just not your traditional, oh, we're playing a card game. It gives a visual representation of your cards. It shows like the attacks you do, the moves, like your team working together. So it's a really interesting concept for a TCG type deal on a console.
Okay, so the arcade version was like you bring your own deck kind of thing? Is that what
what
it is? Okay.
Your deck in the game consists of 7 cards, so you'd bring those 7 cards with you, and you would set them up, and you kind of have like a 3-tier field, like you've seen in like if you ever played Gwent or something like that in the Witcher series. You kind of set out your cards in different spots, and depending where they were is like how they'd attack or how powerful they'd be. So it's got a lot of elements working together, so it can be like overwhelming to somebody that's not like a real big TCG fan.
Okay.
So it's not like Pokemon or something where you just go in, you get your thing, you know exactly what you're doing. There's power-ups you can get, add-ons, you can add on stuff to the cards, and yeah, it's a lot to pay attention to, but it really captures what Dragon Ball is, and I guess it's based off of like a real short extra anime called the Super Dragon Ball Heroes.
Okay. So how does the like bringing your own deck and putting it physically on a machine work in the Switch version? How does it translate?
Everything's represented like inside. Like you're not going to have your deck and bring it to the Switch to use. Within the game, it allows you to create your deck and have that.
Okay.
So instead of you physically doing it, they've translated it into the game. But then they kept the arcade elements. Like you have to like move the joystick left and right to power up your card, but it'll say like move your card left and right. So they haven't like completely like taken out the elements, but they're still there. So sometimes it'll be like, I don't have a card to move around. Oh, it's the joystick. Gotcha.
So is it mostly geared at online play, like you're playing against other people?
There's a story mode to it. That's what I've started with. There is a multiplayer part where you can go on and battle other people. I haven't dove into that yet because after checking a couple videos on like how to create your deck, how to make it work, what you're actually looking for, because it's just 7 cards. It's not your traditional like 30 card decks, 60 card decks like Magic and other games that we're used to.
Okay, cool. And is it just on Switch or is it anywhere else?
I believe it is just on Switch.
Okay, cool. All right, sounds. And what do you know what it's going for? What the price is?
It is 60.
Oh, it's a full price, huh?
Yeah, it's a full price game. That's why I was like, oh, a card game at full price? That means
Yeah.
no microtransactions, no like paying to be able to keep going. That's what really interested me, so I wasn't too worried about it being a full price, but the content's definitely there.
Okay, that is the case. There isn't any microtransactions or anything like that.
Yeah, nope.
Okay, cool. All right, so that was Super Dragon Ball Heroes on the Switch. Yeah, so I picked up a little game called Supraland. That's Supra, SupraLand, on the PC. And the Steam description was kind of like very open with what it was. It says it's literally like a Zelda, Metroid, Portal inspired first person puzzle game. So I was like, okay, cool. That sounds kind of cool. The art style looked cool. And these kinds of games, they come out all the time. Metroidvanias and things like that. And a lot of them are kind of one note and they don't really do anything special. And then every once in a while, one comes out that kind of takes all those ideas and ends up producing something kind of, special out of it. Like, no, I wouldn't say revolutionary, but like combines all of them together and adds its own flavor to it. And this is one of those. The story seems a little strange. You're this little plastic figure in this kid's sandbox. Like, literally, it starts out with this kid putting you into his sandbox, and there's like sandcastles, and the art style is this kind of like mix between super realistic items you would find in a sandbox. Like, there's like a garden hose and things like that look realistic, but then up against this kind of these creations that these quote unquote plastic people made, like their houses and stuff like that. And it's just like full of all of these really crazy puzzles. Like, they're really intelligently designed. They don't really it's weird. It's like every single corner you turn, every single place you look, there's a puzzle, and it doesn't really feel like they don't belong there in the world, even though when you really think about it, it's like, why would the world be just full of all of these puzzles? But they just kind of blend naturally into the world, and there isn't anything that repeats. There isn't anything that's like, oh man, I've already done this puzzle before, so I already know how to do it. Everyone feels original. You're constantly getting new abilities to let you like double jump, triple jump. I just got a gun that allows you to like do all sorts of other stuff, like shoot these things on the wall that trigger doors opening or certain things happening. It's just a really well-made, well-playing game that has a lot of really clever puzzles in it that just keeps you going. And yeah, it's just the story's kind of strange at this point. There might be some weird thing going on with religion. I'm not 100% sure. But it just starts out with you're this red village and the blue village, which if you see the art style, all the human quote unquote characters look like gingerbread men. They're like they got a red plastic looking head, and their body is just like one solid color and stuff like that. And you're the red village, and the blue village is turned off your water supply, which is very important for these people, I guess. They need water for whatever they need water for. So that's like how it starts out. You're trying to get to the blue village to figure out why they sabotage your water supply. But the story is really just one of those reasons to keep pushing forward. There isn't really a deep narrative. It doesn't seem like that anyway. But it's got a good sense of humor. Like, you keep being told that you have to get to the MacGuffin, which, in the grand story of video games is usually just some sort of random object to push the plot forward. So they're kind of playing tongue-in-cheek with that, but then you actually go and you do it, and it's not just a MacGuffin, it's actually a new, very important ability that allows you to access all sorts of new different kinds of things. So they're kind of playing it both ways with that joke. And yeah, I've just been really enjoying it. And it just plays good, looks good, and has kept me occupied for quite a while without feeling like I said, it doesn't feel like the puzzles repeat and are reused over and over again. They keep coming up with original stuff. And it's like, it's only like $20 on Steam. When I picked it up, it was $16 on sale, so it's a pretty good price. It has full controller support, so if you're a gamepad player on PC, you can use that. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend it.
Ooh.
Yeah, sounds interesting.
Yeah, and it seems like with the gamepad support and everything, it would translate well over to consoles. So hopefully, they're successful and they're able to get console versions out. Speaking of consoles, we've got our first big story of the day here. Sony sat down with Wired magazine and kind of gave a overview of what the PlayStation 5 is going to be in terms of like bullet points on what we can expect from the new console. They shied away from specifically calling it the PlayStation 5, but it's probably got to be what it's called. And even if it isn't called that, people are probably still going to refer to it as the PlayStation 5. And just to kind of go down the list, because that's kind of what it reads like to me. Some of the things that were brought up were it's going to have some sort of solid state drive technology for really fast loading. They said that Mark Cerny, who's the kind of currently the engineering mastermind at Sony at the moment behind the at least their last two consoles, gave an example of Marvel's Spider-Man, the PlayStation 4 one that just came out last year. He kind of loaded up a fast travel in that on the PlayStation 4 Pro, and it took 15 seconds to load. And on this new PlayStation 5 kit, it only took 0.8 seconds to load. So one of their big things that they're going for with this is to minimize or almost eliminate loading times, which I don't know if you guys have noticed, but this generation in particular, load times have been kind of crazy. Like, especially going from dashboard to getting into, say, like a big open world game or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say with that, like, I have a solid state in my PlayStation Pro, but the current consoles aren't really even designed to take full functionality over what they really offer, so...
Yes, yeah, that's true. There's definitely less of a benefit from putting a solid state drive in a current console than there would be for one that's specifically designed around it, which it kind of sounds like they're going for with this. They even said that it might be some sort of proprietary technology, like not just a normal regular SSD, some sort of hybrid way that it works with the console in games and stuff like that.
Kind of sounds like it'll be closer to like an NVMe, where it's kind of a chip that's in there versus an actual physical drive that we're used to.
Yeah, it could be like that. I know that in my experience with PC, like over the last probably like decade or so, the biggest improvement that you can make to your computer is to put an SSD in it. Um, like it's even more of a impact than like, having a ton of RAM or having a really fast graphics card or a processor. Is getting an SSD in there as your like boot drive and main program drive will like make your PC experience like night and day from a
Yeah,
hard drive. Um,
yeah, the SSDs make a huge difference because I'll even take like older laptops, throw an SSD in it, and they'll run and load up as fast as something newer.
mhm. So yeah, having one of those in your console would improve it a lot. Like even just from turning the console from off to on and getting into a game would probably be, halved, um, if not more. Um, some other things that they mentioned. Well, they mentioned that it's going to be 8K ready, which whatever the hell that means. Because like this gen, even the pro versions, they're there with 4K, but they're really not. Um, they struggle a lot with, especially trying to hit. You can't even hit like 60 frames a second in 4K. And some games sometimes they even struggle at 1080p for 60. So
Yep.
I'm would kind of take that with a grain of salt. Um, like how much that's going to be supported day one, and whether or not there'll even be any content for it, because there isn't even really any 8K like videos out or anything like that.
Right. I'd just be looking forward to a more stable 4K picture.
Yeah, um, that would be that seems like what the real target should be. Um, they mentioned backwards compatible with at least PlayStation 4 games. So that's good news for, somebody that has a big PlayStation 4 library. Um, you won't have to keep that PlayStation 4 hooked up. According to this, you should be able to just put those discs in the PlayStation 5 and they should be able to play.
It
Whether
depends how they do it, though. It depends if they do it like Xbox or not. Because if they do it like Xbox has, this last time round, it's pointless. Because all it is really is a key to the digital copy. If you can play it completely from the disc, then you have stand more of a. It's more attractive because then you're not kind of limited to what they can put out in digital stores. So if you look at a back catalogue of the PS4 or the PS3 or the PS2, ever far they go back, you're probably going to lose about a third of those by them not being able to put those games on the digital store because of license lapses and stuff like that for, say, movie video games or comic book video. So you do lose a lot. So, you do get back compatibility, but if it's digital, it's kind of, it's
yeah,
a stumbling block a little.
yeah, I guess it depends on what's happening here. Is it like working natively on the hardware, or is there, like in the case of the 360 and original Xbox games working on the Xbox One, is there like some sort of, because from what I understand, each one of those games for backwards compatibility has been retouched by either Microsoft or the developer to kind of get the best performance out of it and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, and a lot of that is, I think, because I don't know how well it would run if they didn't go back and touch it up. And like it could just be an incompatibility thing. Like they, without going back and making some tweaks to it, the hardware just wouldn't be compatible with it. And in the case with the PlayStation 4, the main reason why we'd don't have PlayStation 3 games on there, we speculate anyways because of how difficult it is to emulate the PlayStation 3. How much power it takes to emulate that, because the architecture was so different, the hardware was so different.
Yep.
But we do have some games that have been brought over for the PlayStation 2, and I'm not sure, has there anything been, like, I know that for the PlayStation 2, they have some of those, like, classics that they've brought back up digitally. You can't put the disc in or anything like that, but they have some PlayStation classics that they've brought over. I don't know if they've done it with anything from PlayStation 1, though. I'm not 100% sure. Nothing that
I think
really
there are
comes to
some.
me.
I don't know whether it's like digital or whether it's streamed. I'm not sure. With the PS1,
yeah.
I'm sure there's PS1 stuff on there, but I think that's how they got around the PS3 thing, which was streaming it, wasn't it? Straight to the console.
Yeah, I guess you can use PlayStation Now to play some of those PlayStation 3 games.
Yeah.
Which is something that they didn't mention very much at all, if at all, in this piece, is like if there's going to be a big streaming component to the console. Because as we've been talking about for a little while here, that seems to be at least one direction that some companies are going in, is streaming. So it would be interesting to see if Sony has like a plan for PlayStation Now, if they're gonna like redo it or something, like relaunch it or something like that, or if they're just gonna kind of focus more on the physical side. So the SSD thing was probably one of my biggest things coming out of this, reading up on it. The other thing was what they talked about with ray tracing, which is up until this point just something we've been talking about with high-end PC cards that came out last year, and that's like a new way to handle lighting in gaming, where it kind of simulates it more realistically than the way that they've had to do it in the past, which is kind of like painting each light individually. But with ray tracing, they can like program a sun in the sky, and it will automatically kind of naturally light the scenery around it, putting shadows where shadows need to be, and things like that. I'm not a developer. I don't know all of the technical terms with this, but I have seen some of the examples of it. Like just recently, Metro Exodus had ray tracing capability on PC, and it actually makes it's kind of, at this point, from what I understand it, to be kind of like a resource hog, but it does make it easier for developers to program things like lighting in an environment, because they don't have to like previously. One of the big examples I've seen is the gun you're holding, say in like a game like Metro Exodus, right? Every time that the light changes on that gun, it would have to be a new texture of that gun that loads. So like if you turn, or you're out in the sun, or you have a light on it from when you're indoors or something like that, if it's a green light, if it's a red light, the texture has to be swapped in and out every time that lighting changes on it. But with ray tracing, it doesn't have to be. The gun would just have all of that information programmed into it already, and the light would refract and reflect and stuff automatically, based on whatever the source was in the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine, from like a small developer standpoint, where you're trying to minimize cost and time developing, not having to program all of that stuff, not having to generate all of those textures, would save a lot of time. And from what I understand from the examples that are out currently, it kind of makes a big difference visually for the player, because everything just looks more natural in terms of lighting. So you can do a lot more with lighting, make it a lot more moodier, a lot more realistic.
Yeah. So it's something the player can appreciate as opposed to being just a quality of life thing for the devs.
Yes, definitely. Like
Yeah,
it's pretty significant in terms of like visuals, what it looks like. And it's kind of, like I said before, it's a resource hog on PC right now. So the idea that, this next gen console is going to be able to handle it out of the gate is kind of, what is this actually going to be? Is this just a talking point, or are they going to be able to back it up with actual examples and pulling it off, and at the same time do 8K? So you start to wonder, like, either what they have in this box is like kind of like truly revolutionary and truly the next step forward, or they're kind of stretching the truth a little bit, or it's going to be like $1,000, like what is...
you just said there about kind of how much truth is in it. I didn't see the piece with Cerny, so I'm just kind of going off what you were saying. I'm one of these people that's kind of, until it's on a plinth, you can say whatever you like. How much as it was kind of, we're doing this is in now, or this is, how much of it was, we're aiming at this? Because I didn't see any of it. How much of it is like confirmed to be in?
Well, I mean, they had a physical box.
Oh, it did? Oh. Okay.
Yeah, they had a dev kit, which dev kits aren't always final hardware, but it is a goalpost, because they're giving it to developers to be like, hey, here's what this is going to be, so develop for it. And at least in the case of the loading that I mentioned before, he did that. He supposedly did that while they were sitting in the room. Like, he had the PlayStation 4 Pro, and he had this PlayStation 5 dev unit, and it took 15 seconds on the PlayStation 4 Pro. The same thing took 0.8 seconds on the PS5. So that was at least something that he showed in real time. So as far as I can tell, like, obviously he wasn't able to show off 8K because nobody has an 8K TV. None of the games that are currently out right now support 8K. As far as the ray tracing, I'm not sure what they showed off with that. That might have been so that's kind of the thing that the developer has to program for, right? So there probably isn't any game right now that shows that off. So that was probably more of a, it will be capable of ray tracing. Whether or not a game is going to support it or how a game is going to support it is up to the developer.
Yeah, I think off the bat with that too, we'll see a lot more of the ray tracing. Like, once it comes out, we'll see more of it being supported by movies, because that's where it's generally being used right now, is for CGI effects and stuff like that in movies. Versus actually being in video games.
It's it's something that's been used in CG for movies for a long time now, and it's just now coming into gaming, because with a movie you have infinite amounts of resources and time to bake all of that into your render, and then once it's done, it's done. With the game, everything changes constantly with the player turning and moving, and everything has to happen in real time, so it's taking a lot longer to make its way into video games, but it's getting there. And so one of the interesting things that was mentioned here also was that up until this point we have just been talking about ray tracing from a visual standpoint, but I guess it can work with anything that can be simulated as a ray. So it can be adapted to work with sound as well. So Cerny explained that the PlayStation 5 is going to have some sort of advanced audio capability as well for 3D audio, which you've already been kind of getting into with Dolby Atmos, and Windows has their own version of it, Sonic or something like that. And that's supposed to simulate, audio, not just around, like behind you, in front of you, on the side, but also above and below you. And apparently, if you program your audio using ray tracing, it will, just like how with light, it will simulate it bouncing off walls and objects and stuff like that. It will also do that with audio. So you'll get like a sense of, like, say something if a sound is behind a corner or something like that, you'll be able to tell the difference between whether it's behind the corner or right in front of you. Or if it's in the room next to you behind a closed door, or if the door is open, for instance. And just like with that stuff can be programmed right now, like simulated when you're recording the audio and in post-processing and stuff like that. But by just having that single audio source and then being able to throw it into an environment and have kind of the technology built into the console or the engine or whatever you're working with automatically simulate all of those different kinds of scenarios, that again is going to be a big help for development, because they won't have to spend so much time simulating all of these different scenarios. And then for the player, that's going to be a lot more immersive, especially for like your horror games and stuff like that, to kind of put you more in the environment, just with the audio experience. So that sounds pretty cool too. But that's
interesting.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll see how that pans out. Not to leave a pun in there, but
So how much of this do you think they was ready to put the information, or how much of this do you think was getting there before? Because obviously there's going to be the first big next gen reveal in June with E3. That's when they was going to announce, because they're talking about we're going to be showing our next generation thing.
Who's saying that?
Microsoft. Well, they will be showing some of the. Well, they'll be announcing their new tech at E3.
Maybe.
Because
they haven't
obviously it's coming,
that.
And it's going to. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
because obviously
there's speculation that they might, but they haven't actually come out and literally said the next Xbox will be at E3.
Well, they've had to say something now, haven't they? They've had to say, "Oh, by the way, we're also doing this, guys," which I think that sort of information they probably would have left for a month or so. So, I do think it's getting out the gate quick, possibly.
Yeah, there's
what they've been doing. Yeah,
there's been a lot of like speculation on why did this come out when it did? Why did it come out like it did? Because it's kind of a weird reveal. Yeah. It's not in the tradition with typically how these things get revealed. Why
quite
Wired?
Yeah,
because Wired isn't really a gaming focused site. It's more of a tech focused site. So yeah, there's the possibility that they're just trying to get out ahead of E3 with whatever Microsoft's going to announce. They wanted to be the first one out of the gate. There's also some speculation that Wired may have had something leaked to them, information, and they went to before they published it as a rumor, they went to Sony and was like, "Hey, here's what we have. We're going to publish this as a rumor, or if you want to sit down with us and verify it, maybe we can do it that way." Because
Shifty.
GDC just happened, which is where a lot of leaks end up coming out because a lot of developers are coming together and talking about things, blah, blah, blah. And that's also where the original story of the PlayStation 4 Pro leaked, was people talking and overhearing things at GDC. So there's a possibility that could have happened too. Whether or not we'll ever know, I don't know. But that's a possibility. Yeah, so I mean, what are we thinking about this? Is this interesting? Like, is this, like, say this is coming out and it's a reasonable price? Do these things that they're mentioning interest us? Is there anything else that we're interested in for next generation? Like, where does this land with us?
Solid state's definitely interesting. The only part that's kind of worrying me is they're going with AMD, AMD, for their technology on this, and they've kind of, as of lately, been on like the back end of things.
Yeah, AMD, Nvidia, Intel, they keep like doing their steps. Like, one goes and then the next one catches up. But these consoles have been AMD for a very long time. They get like deals with AMD, and they get the latest technology in before they even come out to PC and stuff like that.
I guess with that note that you said right there, one thing that is pretty cool they have mentioned that I was reading here is that they're using currently available hardware. So maybe we'll actually see more of these at release, where it's not going to be such a like, oh my god, I got to get this pre-ordered the moment it's announced, because they're going to sell out really fast. There might be more of an availability.
Yeah, maybe they'll plan ahead, and they'll be they'll have a big stock of it. So, but you gotta also create that fake scarcity, right?
Yeah. It might allow them to, like, they can create that, and then like a week later be like, all right, here's the next set of a decent amount. And then
like, oh, we found another warehouse full of PlayStation 5s.
Yeah.
That we had forgot about.
Not like, all right, here's 5 for this store in this entire area for the next year.
Yeah. Like what ended up happening with the Switch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I like the SSD is probably the biggest thing for me. And I look forward to seeing whatever they're able to pull off with this ray tracing. I'm interested to see, not necessarily how it's used in like big budget, like just making the next Assassin's Creed look nice or something like that, but how it's used in kind of like an experimental way, especially with the audio. Like, if you can imagine something like on the level of Hellblade, but using even more directional audio and stuff like that, that could be really interesting. And of course, the backwards compatibility is cool too, whatever that ends up being. Being able to bring at least my PlayStation 4 library forward is going to be a good thing, because I got mix of physical and digital, so not having to worry about keeping that console around is going to be a good thing. And maybe some of them will even take advantage of some of the advancements. Like, I'm sure they'll load faster, even if they aren't specifically programmed to take advantage of the SSD. Just the fact that it's a faster storage medium is going to improve the load times on a lot of the games.
And hopefully giving enough space to add in when you go to add a bigger one, like Sony traditionally lets us do in most of their consoles. They make it pretty easy to swap out hard drives and stuff like that. Just like with the Pro, the issue I ran into was just like, I needed a couple millimeters extra space between a 2 terabyte and a 4 terabyte SSD when I was switching. So I had to go with the 2 because you couldn't just jam it in there.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what they do.
I guess making sure these consoles have a big enough amount of storage when it comes out too is kind of a big deal, because that seemed to be a big issue last gen, where hard drives just filled up way too quickly.
Yeah.
And now if they're
Even now,
if they're talking about 8K games, that's going to be twice as big.
Yeah.
And I guess if you have the specialized SSD inside the thing, what's the deal with external storage? Is it going to be just as fast, or is it going to be slower?
Right.
I guess we're going to have to see how that all shakes out. What about you, Lee? What are your big things for next gen that you're looking for out of the consoles?
I don't tend. This is where I'm going to sound like an arbitrary, awkward person. I don't tend to worry about that stuff. I'm one of these people that always hangs on the current gen, and then let it see it pan out, or what then would be the previous gen. I always see how it plays out for the first year or so, because generally you're going to have like the kind of your. This is our example of, like last generation with PlayStation. Their big example of what we can do was stuff like the Order and stuff like that, which is kind of, they don't really advance their kind of, or show what they can do with their systems for the first year or so with their games, I guess.
Yep.
So I'd like to see what they do there. So I never really jump in on the ground floor. And when you say stuff about kind of, well, the faster load times, kind of when you go from last generation where you had kind of 2.5 minutes sometimes loading times to 15 seconds this generation, it's like, that's great. But from 15 to kind of 0.35 doesn't make much of more of a difference to me to make me want to jump in straight away day one to pre-order. If you get what I mean, that sort of stuff. Yeah, I understand that the light will be better and the sound will be better, but it's still pretty high quality. I don't think we're at the point where it's essential to jump in straight away day one, unless you're really a fan of a console, I guess, and you really want to get in on the ground floor with those exclusives and stuff, like that first kind of 10, 15 batch of games they release. I don't know. I don't know if it's all for the games for me. I mean, the tech will be good to some extent. That's not really going to be a doubt. It's kind of,
I guess
going to be.
What would they have to do to get you to jump on day one? Like, what would it have to be? Like, let's not even talk about tech. Let's talk about anything and everything.
Nothing really, because it's more the way I consume stuff than me having a problem with the way.
Well, let's say PlayStation gets out there and says, Resident Evil 8 is PlayStation 5 exclusive day one.
I'll see it in a year.
Okay.
You just don't know how it's going to pan out. You don't know how it's
okay, so it pans out really good. Like, it comes out and it's amazing. I'm talking about like best case scenario, everything's perfect.
I'll play it at my friend's house. It's just the way I can. And also, you got to think about the way the first models come out, and this has definitely been proven for the last couple of generations. That kind of first batch of models that have all of these issues, kind of with the literal running, kind of burning out, or kind of bad power consumption and stuff like you had with 3 and the burning out of 360s and stuff like that. And you also had some sort of problems with the first Xbox Ones. There was always kind of these things they wrinkle out, and you kind of get a second model of it or a refined model of it a year later, and they kind of scrunch everything and they perfect everything. And so I tend, that's another reason why I tend to wait. Or when you had the fat PS2s and they kind of had those issues with kind of heating up and stuff like that.
Yeah, I haven't really heard too much this generation of that.
Yeah. I guess I just tend to wait for them to kind of iron that out, and they kind of get that second revision out, maybe. But not so much a new model, and here's a slim version of that. But they often do revisions within that, don't they?
Yeah.
Within those batches. So I normally wait for a batch to come out anyway, but that's just the way I consume things. And mostly, I kind of 80% of the games I buy are normally multi-platform games. So I'll usually get a version of that on the generation I have.
Yeah.
So I don't really lose out too much. I can go and kind of look at Sunset and Overdrive from afar, you know, for instance, or look at the Order from afar, or don't look at the Order at all. That'd be more preferable.
Yeah, I would stay away from that. Like, always keep a distance.
That's a good example of that was showing you exactly what they could do with these new things that they pumped you. It's kind of look what we do with the lighting and the kind of the textures and look at the water on the lamp that's coming down in the rain, stuff like that. But there was nothing behind it. They're all just generally tech demos for the first year. So I tend to not wait. They all do that to some extent.
Yeah, this generation in particular had a slow start.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say for me, I mean, I'm already in on the PC, so I'm pretty much no matter what they put out on these consoles, it's not gonna like blow me away. But
no.
I am at least interested to see what the launch lineup is, and if it does anything. Yeah. If there's something there that's like, ooh, that looks kind of cool, and it's, you know, it's not just like a tech showpiece or something like that, like Horizon Zero Dawn 2, if that's a launch game.
Yeah.
Like, I know the first one is good, and I know their follow-up, like, for all intents and purposes, should be good. There's no reason why they should not knock that out of the park. That might be something that gets me going, you know, or if like Death Stranding ends up being a launch game.
Yeah.
And it isn't PlayStation, like they're talking about maybe that game ends up being PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, like a cross-gen kind of thing. In that case, then I'm probably just going to get it for PlayStation 4. But but at the same time, I did that with Breath of the Wild. I got that on the Wii U, and played like 80 hours of that. And I liked it, but the experience on the Switch would have been better if I had just jumped in and got it. So, you know, there's kind of a, it's not always black and white like that. So yeah, I guess
there was enough of a jump from the Wii U to the Switch to warrant a day one, because there's enough new interesting things going on with it. The amalgamation of the Wii with the pad portability of the Wii U.
The game just
an interesting thing
played like shit on the Wii U as well.
You think?
Like it didn't play well on the Switch.
I didn't play comparison, so yeah.
There wasn't too much. There was definitely some issues on the Switch, but on the Wii U, it was crazy how like poor that played comparatively anyway. Especially,
I have to play the Switch version to see that.
Yeah, and it looks and everything too. Like it looks a lot better on the Switch, like the draw distance and the sharpness of the whole thing.
But
yeah, and like, you know, maybe in like 2 or 3 years, I'll go back to Breath of the Wild and replay it from the beginning, and but this time I'll play it on the Switch. You know.
Yeah. So too long didn't read. No, I'm not buying it day one.
Yeah, I mean, the technology is good, but at the end of the day, what is there going to be there when I buy it? What am I going to be able to play on it?
Software. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tech is irrelevant. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else anybody wants to like? Yeah, I guess I guess that kind of wraps up like what we would want as a response for Microsoft too, would be, you know, the tech's good, but what are you gonna have available day one on that console, and whether or not it's a wait 6 months or a year and see, because I'm imagining that it's certainly backwards compatibility is going to be in the books, because that's the way they're going with all of that stuff. And I just
it depends on how people. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how people kind of view the availability of the catalog, the game catalog, because now you have a narrative of kind of why do I want to get these specific games for this when I can get them on a PC, which is now potentially opening up to also Nintendo. So that's another kind of, they're looking at kind of doing the Game Pass thing potentially on the. So are you then buying the console then, an Xbox console? This is from somebody that really quite likes the Xbox. Are you buying it just for the convenience of having the box?
Mm-hmm.
Because should I just get a Switch and then get the Game Pass games on Switch, which will probably be streamed to the Switch? Because I think Switch is the of the three consoles. If you want to, there's that argument which console or not. I don't get into that, but they kind of have this thing, especially with, like, say, for instance, Capcom games. They're all streaming games. You don't kind of get them downloaded. So a Game Pass type system is good. Is where you could see a lot of those games go in and be able to.
What do you mean the
play through
Capcom
Switch.
games are streaming? You have.
I believe that kind of Resident Evil 7 is a streaming only game. You can't download it digitally on the Switch.
Okay.
It's specifically streaming only. And I believe there's rumblings of 2 being on there and also being the same thing. Kind of, yeah. There's kind of quite a few streaming options to having a big game like that. Obviously, kind of a very texture-heavy game like that.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of stream it through, I guess.
That sounds like probably a storage thing.
Yeah, I would have said so, especially with the way Switch handles stuff like textures, and when you see the way textures are handled in the 7 engine, particularly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. But yeah, so that's what makes the thing is how they're going to handle their increasing availability of content. Microsoft, because it's opening up, which is nice for people, but also a good excuse to say I don't need that for others.
Right. Well, I think that their goal moving forward, and for the past few years has been like give you the options. Here are the games, and we're gonna put them as in many places as we can, and you choose wherever you wanna play them.
They could be geniuses, or they could shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to shoot themselves in the foot, because I think that so many of their services have gone the way of a pay-for service that whatever they put out is probably going to be not only priced well, but also just work and be valuable to whoever wants to go for it. So I guess we'll see what E3 brings, because I think that's where we'll see a lot of information on maybe not necessarily their next console, but at least where they're moving forward with technology and what you can expect from the way games are going to be delivered to you from Microsoft.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll be revisiting this subject soon. In the next month or so, as more information comes out about everything. So let's take a trip to the zombie apocalypse real quick. Lee and Derrick, you've been playing World War Z, which I feel like kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think anybody was expecting a World War Z game to come out around this time, but here it is, and it doesn't star Brad Pitt. What is this kind? It's like this co-op shooter, and why is it worth your time?
It's as you say, it's a 4-player co-op shooter, very much in the mold of a Left 4 Dead, which is kind of the option to go in 1 to 4 players. It also has if you want to play single player. and then everyone's controlled AI body, but it works as both. So there's a generally kind of a story element to it, kind of rather than just being arenas of something. And kind of so you are positioned as kind of the way World War Z works. Sorry, I keep saying Z. I apologise. The way World War Z works is kind of it's a snapshot of the zombie apocalypse from around the world. So you are plopped into kind of 4 different areas. You've got New York, Jerusalem. Help me out, Derek. What's the third one?
The other 2 are Tokyo and Moscow.
Boom. There you go. And kind of you're dropped in there, and the general idea is kind of plow through with your people of different classes, different kind of skill classes, and you will occasionally lay traps on your way through. You generally kind of it's armed combat, a little bit of melee combat, and you kind of plow your way through with your other 3 players. It's pretty interesting. I think Left 4 Dead is a pretty well-known game now, so you could say it's a Left 4 Dead model, and people know what you're talking about. It does things that are a little bit more interesting than that, by kind of really expanding your kind of the way you use your characters. It's a weird thing where you have to explain how it works, because if you go by the movie, it doesn't make any sense. If you read the book, it's a snapshot of how the whole world perceives the zombie apocalypse. So you'll see it from different perspectives around the world, as opposed to just see it through Brad Pitt, this long-haired journalist man.
Right.
The characters you play, which within each thing are kind of their avatars. Particularly attached to the area you are. So obviously, if you're in Tokyo, you've got 4 Japanese avatars. They don't ever change. They're kind of interchangeable who you use. The difference is you kind of have 6 or 7 skill-based things you can run with within whichever character you use, which is kind of gunslinger, medic. And it's got a surprisingly big skill tree for something you don't expect from being a Left 4 Dead clone, I guess you want to call it.
Yeah.
There's some quite in-depth skill things. Like if you want to be a medic, for instance, they do things that you don't normally do with medics. Kind of normally medic, you have like extensive kits. This, if you progress across your medic skill set, you will kind of have stuff like you've got a projectile healer, so you can kind of shoot things across a map into other players to heal them from across the way and stuff like that, which makes it a bit more snappy. Yeah, it's quite interesting the way they do it. Everything is you've kind of very much.
Sounds
it's a very
like The Division.
generous Sometimes it feels like The Division in a weird way. You don't have the cover system, but when you're running through New York, it has a very dilapidated kind of way of looking at things. And that kind of does remind you of it, and you have a weird kind of. There's the same sort of meaty, like projectile combat as well, weapons combat. It's the same sort of meaty feel as maybe a, excuse me, Division.
Okay, so Lee, you've been playing mostly through the single player, and you found that pretty enjoyable.
Yeah, the story's thin, but there's kind of quite open, interesting, because you'll meet people that kind of send you on a quest. They're not very well drawn. I mean, you have banter between your own character, but the people you meet aren't particularly. It's not like stunning. It's not like Amy Henning type writing. But you'll meet people and they send you off into these things, and you have to. There's a good example where you need to get on a train, and the guy that runs the train's a bit of a lunatic, and he won't let you get on the train until you go and do several different tasks. Go and get me 4 or 5 different sets of caches from around the station, and then kind of go and unlock doors, and then there's. So you've got more to do than your general Left 4 Dead, which was normally you come to a dead end in Left 4 Dead, you flip a switch, and then the horde comes in, and then you kill the horde, then the switch opens. There's kind of a little bit more to that. Something that seems like a detriment, but actually kind of ramps the pace up, is that your AI characters, when you do play like that, are quite smart, but they don't tend to heal themselves. You kind of have to keep an eye on their health, which seems like a massive oversight. You can get them to heal you, but you can't heal them. They can't heal each other, rather.
Okay.
If that makes sense. While you're busy, so you have to keep your eye on them, and it ranks detection up quite a lot. And stuff like that. They don't flip switches for you. They don't go and do your task for you. Like sometimes that somebody will go and open the door for you. In another game like this, they don't do that for you. Which seems like it's like, well, why didn't you do that? But when you're in the midst of it, it really keeps the pressure on. Kind of keeps the forward propulsion on.
Okay.
Yeah, it's incredibly fun. It's incredibly fun. Very tense. I think the big selling point of it is the way the zombie hordes work.
Oh yeah, the horde system is absolutely a blast.
There's hundreds of zombies on screen at any one time.
Yeah, I think they said
they're all.
I think they said it was around 500 at any given time could be on screen.
Oh wow.
And it's not like you can't interact with some of those 500 on the screen. You know, generally they're all shootable, hittable, bombable.
So like,
and they all react.
Did any of you guys play Left 4 Dead 3? Not Left 4 Dead. I'm sorry, not Left 4 Dead. Dead Rising 3.
Yes.
So the streets full of zombies that you just drove through. Is it like that many?
Don't do anything.
Well, they do if you get out.
They do kind of get twitchy when you get around you, but they don't tend to do much. These are always, they're coming for you. They crawl over each other to get to you.
Yeah, the system, it's smart and it's adaptive.
I guess what I'm getting at is it like, are you encountering these big open areas with these tons of zombies, or is it like 500 zombies being funneled down a hallway or through a doorway? Like what kind of situations are you running into?
I haven't got to touch on the story missions like Lee has, but I've been playing Swarm Deathmatch. And it'll kind of be like certain areas. There'll be, if you start making so much noise in an area, it'll trigger an event, and it'll kind of be like funneled through that area. But they'll be like hopping up over gates, coming out of doors, breaking through certain spots to come after you. Okay. And yeah, it's kind of something that's hard just to like explain it. Like,
yeah. So I guess what I'm getting at is like Lee just described this train station scenario, but a train station sounds like a pretty confined area. Like, how are you going to fit 500 zombies into a train station?
Well, obviously, they funnel through kind of an entrance, and they'll storm through. That part of it doesn't actually have that much of a kind of a stream, because it will take you from that like kind of contain. This is a puzzle sort of type thing. Then you'll get into a main area where kind of the train is now leaving the station, and then, oh shit, they're coming through the doors. So it does set you up for that. It does give you that kind of, here's your set piece.
But it's not like you're walking into this giant city street and there's literally 500 zombies out in front of you that you have to shoot down. No, okay.
No, that would be mindless.
Okay.
That would be...
yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, it's a lot more controlled and like...
Okay.
It really sets up for that mood, like, oh shit, here they come, because then you'll turn and you'll react to this event that happens. You'll start trying to mow down some, but then you're getting backed up because all the other ones are still pushing the top. They're going around, or if they're coming from another direction and you're trying to, like, in deathmatch, you're trying to shoot somebody else because your goal is to take out 50. It's to get to 50 points, so take out 50 other players. And once these waves come through, you know, it might be going after one set. All of a sudden, you start firing. Some of those are gonna like, "Hey, you're making sound. We're gonna come after you now." So, the way it reacts and all, it's just truly like I said, it's amazing to see.
And like, does the gunplay feel good and everything like that? Like, it feels responsive.
It's chunky. It gets better over time because your weapons have XP as well as you do. And the more tiers you get, the more you can open up different... You don't add things to your guns, but the next level of gun has like kind of like decent sites, better kind of stocks and stuff like that. So you get to open them up that way as opposed to buying bits to go on to your weapon. Yeah. So, but the thing about the kind of the horde thing is kind of at points you will have this thing where you are definitely set in a position where you have to fortify your defenses, and you've got like 4 or 5, 6 different cases that maybe have barbed wire fences in, turrets, and you can lay electrified fences, so you can electrocute people on the way through that go on the floor like electrified pads, and then they funnel through, and kind of it's like a kind of a tower defense sort of thing almost. And that's when you generally get your stream of zombies coming through.
Okay,
but then you're out in the open.
Horde mode kind of thing.
Yeah, but then you go out in the open and it also happens again, but then you start to kind of, so it's kind of can be quiet, and then you see them coming and you're like, but shit, I haven't built my defenses, then they're still coming for me. What do I do? So it keeps you on your toes by having the tower defense bit, and then not throwing you to the same situation as the zombies clawing over each other to get to you. But you don't have the benefit of setting up your barracks, as it were.
Okay.
So yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah, this is a third person, not first person, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And
Derrick, the death match, that has been good for you?
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun playing it. Usually deathmatch kind of gets boring after a while because it's just the same thing, but with this horde element to it, or which they also call the swarm, they've kind of taken all your classic modes that you're used to, because there's also domination where you'll control points. You have deathmatch, you have King of the Hill. Those 3 traditional ones now have this huge zombie element to where at random points in time that changes the whole battle, because now you're fighting off these zombies. You're still trying to fight everybody. You're trying to do your objectives. It just creates this chaos. It just really works well together.
Cool.
And they also threw in 2 other ones, just going with like what modes they have. The other 2 are Vaccine Hunt and Scavenge Raid, which you're just trying to, like, one you're trying to find supplies, the other you're trying to find the vaccine. I haven't really got to touch on those, but they just kind of like the modes we like. They've just added this element to it, which makes it work.
And matchmaking's been good for you?
Yeah, there's been some loading issues that people are talking about, but it isn't like as predominant as like when Anthem came out. There was connection issues all over the board, to where it's happened like 1 or 2 times out of like 2 or 3 hours of playing, where it'll freeze up or it might not quite load, so you can just close out of the game, come back in, and then you can get right back in.
Okay, yeah, I noticed when you did your stream, or you did that video, and it in the middle of it, or right at the beginning, it crashed.
Yeah, I had that crash, and then I followed up with where it didn't load into the match. But that crash, that's been the only time that it crashed like that, where I got the blue screen. And then that not loading into a match has only happened 1 other time, and that was like last night. I played for about 2-3 hours, and it happened once. So it's there, it happens, but it's not like a game crippling issue to where everybody's freaking out about it.
Okay, and you're on PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
What are you playing on, Lee?
I'm playing on the Xbox S.
Okay, and it's been running okay? Any crashes or performance issues?
I've never had any crashes or performance issues, but then I'm not playing the maybe the more potentially unstable part of it, which is the connection stuff.
Yeah.
If you play,
Derrick just has
solo,
his crash. Derrick had his crash just like in the menu or something like that.
Oh, classy. No, from what I can understand, the PCs don't tend to have. I think it might just be a problem with that port particularly. I've not heard much issues about that from the other 2 versions, so I don't know.
All right. Anything else you guys want to add?
I mean, we're talking quite positively about it. It's probably good to point out the fact that it's not a masterpiece,
right?
But it's surprisingly good for what it is, which nobody had any expectation of it whatsoever. In fact, it was going to be a dog that was going to die before Days Gone came out, and now it's kind of
it's
been like, actually, this is a little dark horse. This one, this is kind of a fun little game.
Yeah,
but it's probably best not to call it fantastic.
Yeah, it's like it's a budget too. It's like a $40 game, right? Yeah. Okay.
So
So
microtransactions either.
that's a bonus too. You're not paying a full
Mm.
$60 for the product.
They're also talking about adding more countries later. More countries to
Okay, so
add in.
more zones.
Yeah. Tokyo was
alright.
actually a day one edition.
Okay, cool.
So Tokyo was the patch. So yeah.
Yeah, there was. Oh, I was just gonna say that. Yeah, I mean, this wasn't really on my radar until I saw some preview coverage of it, and like they actually had like the developers explaining the game, like the process of making
Mm.
the game, which for
Mm.
me, that kind of that's the opposite of a red flag. I don't know what you would a green flag.
Yeah.
In terms of like, usually these kinds of like licensed games are, like you were saying, just kind of shoveled out the door, but having the actual development team talk about the game and like preview coverage and stuff like that, that's kind of like a good sign for me. And what I saw was interesting.
Yeah.
Like it looked like it was actually coming together as a decent game that was doing something at least a little bit different than just like copy and paste the Left 4 Dead formula, but call it World War Z or something like that.
Yeah, again, that's another thing we concept. But people are saying, why are you doing a 6-year-old Dead franchise? Because World War Z was a long time ago now.
Yeah.
But it was meant to come out alongside, I believe, I don't know if you're into your movie stuff, David Fincher was meant to be making a Left 4 Dead, Jesus Christ, a World War Z game. Movie. Look, I'm all over the place now. A Left 4 Dead movie. Shit, I've done it again. Supposed to make a movie that was meant to be coming out this year or next year, so it was meant to be in tandem. So it wasn't as irrelevant as it looks like it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So it was meant to be more in the zeitgeist than it actually is. It's probably best to look at that they've not just picked up some shitty old franchise. It's meant to be a moving on thing, but they've just cancelled the movie. So
yeah, I
that's why it's kind of sitting there in the middle.
Yeah, I remember hearing about a new World War Z movie, but I didn't realize they had canceled it.
Yeah, no, it's meant to be David Fincher, and they cancelled it, which is a shame because he's an incredibly good director.
Yeah, that probably would have been certainly a lot better than the 2003 movie.
Yeah.
So another flashback we're talking about here. Rage. The original Rage, the very first Rage. The first game of the sequel that's coming out next month. This seems to be what Bethesda is doing lately, is just kind of rebooting old franchises. They did it with Prey. I guess they didn't really do it with Doom. Doom is definitely in the same wheelhouse, but Rage seems to be like they're kind of rebuilding what that game is. It's still going to be, Rage 2 is still going to be a first person shooter, but big focus on abilities and maybe a little bit more of an open world. But we wanted to check out the original, which came out in, was it 2011? Is that when this one came out?
I believe so. 11 or 12.
I just want to make sure, double check that. 2010, November 2010.
Oh, good
on
Lord.
The PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, and Windows. Oh, it's also been ported to iOS. Wow. I bet that's a really great version of that game. So yeah, this was kind of like a big game because this was, at this point, I believe, id Software's follow-up to Doom 3, which came out a ways before this game. So it was kind of like a lot of eyes were on it because, id Software's, Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake, the first-person shooter developer, as it were. And, as time went on, they kind of like ended up being superseded by some other studios in that department, but eyes were still on them for kind of like pushing the genre forward. And they were kind of out coming with Rage talking about like the technology behind it, and that it was gonna be a just a in their wheelhouse kind of thing. Was this also the first game that Bethesda published with them?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if Doom 3 was Bethesda.
I don't think so.
I know the BFG edition was, but obviously that was later.
Right. I'm pretty sure this was their first time working with Bethesda.
Yeah, because Doom 3 was Activision.
Okay.
Oh, good lord.
Oh, good for them. Yep, publisher Activision. Okay. Yeah, so this was their first time working with Bethesda. And I feel like it was also around the time that Skyrim came out. I remember these two games kind of being in my wheelhouse around the same time. And for me anyway, it was like one of this was also when I was first kind of dipping my toe into PC gaming, so I had just built a PC, and Skyrim was one of the first games that I had gotten on it, and Rage was going to be one of those games too, so I was really looking forward to it. And kind of the narrative around the launch of this game especially was the performance issues on the PC, and how it was a little bit not what people were expecting from the people that brought you Doom, let's say. And that's kind of where I'm coming from it, but I know, Lee, you're more coming from it from the console perspective.
Yes.
And I'll let you kind of talk about the Xbox 360 version, and then we'll wrap around to me and Derek talking about the PC version. So how has your experience been on the 360?
Well, I played it on both. I played it on 360 and the backwards compatible one.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to run a lot smoother on the one than it did. Because obviously it's quite a, when you're kind of, because it's broken into two segments, obviously the driving section and the shooting section.
Yep.
Kind of the shooting segment's obviously very kind of code heavy, and it did chug quite a bit on the 360. It's taken a lot of that out. It's kind of made it a lot of a smoother experience on the one. But it was a game that was actually built for the consoles primarily anyway.
Yes.
Which I understand also bears fruit when you kind of try to play it with anything that's not a controller. I understand it's not particularly nice to play with a keyboard. I don't know if you want, because you're playing with a keyboard, aren't you? Key B and N.
Yeah, that I started playing with the mouse and keyboard, and then I actually switched over to the gamepad on PC, and the gamepad experience is better. Some of the button layouts aren't. It's more of like what we've come to expect from first-person control schemes over the past, like 8 years, have changed a little bit. But so certain things are on weird buttons and stuff like that. But overall, the experience is better, especially in the driving, because the driving is like really bad with trying to make a sharp turnaround or something like that with the WASD keys.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're gonna play this game on PC, I would recommend doing it with a controller. Because in my experience, using the mouse and keyboard, even in the shooting, like linear corridor sections, the mouse and keyboard wasn't great. I found it. So when we're talking about on PC, especially with the lineage of id, we're talking about like really fast, really precise, frantic first-person shooters, and that's not really what this game is delivering. It's way more deliberate than that. And the way that the enemies move is almost subverts your expectation of what you're going to get when you're pointing your mouse at an enemy and pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
They do things like they run on the walls, they flip, they jump over objects, and when you're with the preview coverage of this game, it looked really cool. Like when you see these enemies jumping on the wall and over tables and stuff like that, and then like the guy throws the wing stick, which is like a three-bladed boomerang that cuts heads off and arms and stuff like that. It all looks really cool, but then when I started like really diving into it, what I realized was like, but it also feels like it's all very scripted. Like the combat encounters didn't feel very dynamic to me. Like every time you play through this mission, this particular enemy is always going to jump on this wall and run along this particular path. And if you're ready for it, you're going to be able to hit him. Or if you're not, you're just going to waste a whole lot of ammo not hitting him. And it really came full front when I checked out the Scorcher DLC, which I know, Lee, you didn't check out. But
No.
if you do have that, you can actually access it right from the first hub area that you get to. And that felt so much like a on-rails shooter. It was crazy. Like you have all of the, like this environment where all of these catwalks and walkways are like crisscrossing above you, and enemies are jumping off of them, but you can't get to them yourself. Like you're on this narrow path through this level, and if it wasn't for the fact that you were actually using the keys on the keyboard or the analog stick to push your character through, it would feel like it was an on-rail shooter. Like the game could just take over, put you into this location, have all of these enemies emerge and jump at you, and you shoot them, and then automatically move on to the next area. And from that perspective, it's actually pretty good. Like it looks really good when it does stuff like that, and the enemy animation is really nice, and like the sounds and everything like that are really cool and immersive, and the guns do feel good. They feel heavy. They feel powerful. But when you're looking for something that's a little bit more kinetic, a little bit more fast-paced, it just wasn't delivering that for me. Especially with the mouse and keyboard, it didn't really feel responsive either. Felt better.
But do you think that's with? Do you feel like that's with hindsight though? Because we're looking at it in a kind of a very much pre-Rage 2 mindset, and we're talking about stuff like what happened post Rage, with like you look at like your Wolfensteins and your Doom 16s, but it has got a lot more in common with the slower pace of a Doom 3, and it was more of a post Doom 3 thing than it is a pre New Order or whatever. So
I think that there's definitely an element of that there, but I also think Doom 3 received a lot of criticism for that exact thing as well. Being a very slow game, especially compared to what Quake and Doom were previously. And in the case of Doom 3, I feel like they had more of a vision for it though, like they were going for more of a horror vibe. Whereas with Rage, I don't really see the vision because it's broken up into so many different like disparate pieces. Like you have this first person shooter that basically you're going into a mission zone and it's on a rail first person shooter. Like it's very linear. There isn't a whole lot of paths to explore off to the side. And by and large, the enemies kind of just either run at you or they just hide behind one single piece of cover and don't move until you kill them. And unless you're fighting a boss guy like the flame guys or something like that, who will just come at you and try to burn you. But then you have this open world-ish driving segment, which you get weapons on your car and you can blow up bandits, and there are these like jumps you can do to, I don't really, do you get anything out of it other than just like achievements? I'm not really sure.
Not
what
really.
You get
No.
Yeah, it's just like a cool thing to pull off with your vehicle that kind of hits jumps and then kind of does whatever it wants once it's up in the air. And there's definitely some cool shit here because like when you go into especially Wellspring, when you first walk into that area and the signage in that area, like the big signs up on the walls, and there's like totally a vibe they're going for. It actually reminds me a lot of like a Fallout, that kind of like post-apocalyptic, but taking visual cues from the past, like big neon signs, and you'd expect it to be like a big Marlboro cigarette advertisement or something like that, in that kind of font usage and stuff like that. And it looks really good, like it's really high detailed and everything. But like when Derrick pointed out in his live stream, some of it looks really good, but then other parts of it look really, really bad. Yeah, like you look at the text. Yeah, you look at the textures on the walls, like up close and on the floor and stuff like that, and it looks like mud, basically.
Yeah, it was really weird because like it's not like it's hogging a lot of resources because like the sky, which is usually dynamic in games that we're used to, wasn't dynamic. It's just one picture, depending how you're rotating. That's what it is, and it doesn't move.
Yeah.
So then you like look down, and I'm up close to this gate, and the gate texture isn't even loaded. It's just there, and it's a blur looking.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing you pointed out with the skybox was like, it's just a static picture of clouds and the sun, and it's always that no matter what. Like there's no day night or anything. But then like I said, when I was in Wellspring, that looks incredible, like the signs and stuff like that, and the way that it guides you around that environment is really clever. Like it has like, signs that are like pointing, here's the sheriff, this is where the mayor is, this is where that is, and it doesn't have icons that are like pointing you in directions or anything like that. And I feel like that's actually pretty clever use of like, like teaching you how to navigate the environment by looking at the environment, not just by following a waypoint or something like that. And like
but then sometimes works to its detriment, though. It sometimes works to its detriment, though, because it doesn't show you much. There's things that you can quite easily miss by kind of. Yes, it gives you visual information, but sometimes you need stuff like. It's the second time I played this now.
You were talking about the bounty board or something, right?
Yeah, that you don't know where. Have you found it yet?
No, I didn't. I spent just a little while in Wellspring, and then I went. The quests have you go back and forth between Wellspring and the Hagar settlement. So I went back to the Hagar settlement, and then it wasn't too long after that before I stopped playing.
Yeah, the problem with it is it's kind of this is where the game runs into problems. It's kind of it can be annoyingly obtuse with a lot of silly things. There's a bounty board in there, which kind of a lot of people complain that this game was incredibly short. That it was rumored to be this terrible 4-hour game, and I can't help now thinking of playing it because I'm playing it about 6 hours. I'm sitting in Wellspring, and I know I've got another 4 areas to go. That people didn't find a lot of these missions that are stuck in different parts of these levels because it's kind of this bounty board is not something that sticks out as an asset. It's like a hazy kind of like you was just saying, a very poor, what would you like to call it, texture on a wall.
Texture, yeah.
It doesn't look like a bounty board. It just looks like a texture on a wall. So you don't go to it, and you go to it, and it's like, I've got these bounties I can do within levels.
Yeah.
Thanks for telling me. And it doesn't tell you to. I think Derrick was an hour in. He didn't realise he could get the what do you call the thing? What do you call the boomerang?
I didn't. the wing sticks. I didn't get
Yeah,
that.
it doesn't tell you to go to the woman.
And I
No.
didn't get the scope for the handgun that you had already as well.
Which you go into the store and it just says, it doesn't say, here's the scope for your gun, because the handgun, the general handgun, can not sometimes be very fun to fire because it's not that accurate. And you'll go into the store when it tells you to go into the store that's in the very first area. And it's like, this is eyesight, and you assume it's going to be a binocular, a single eye eyesight.
Yeah.
So you don't buy it. It's like, well, I'm in inside areas, but it's actually a left-handed sight for your gun. So you kind of hold the gun to your... It doesn't tell you this. So you're just stumbling along for a couple of hours with a gun that isn't very satisfying to use.
Yeah, that first...
All the guns are very satisfying to use eventually.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't tell you that if you keep going into the store in Wellspring, you will eventually start buying a shitload of kind of schematics for your weapons. You were saying yourself you was really pissed off with the way you're doled out ammo. Ammo is very scarce, very penny pinching ammo.
Yeah.
You'll get to a store where it's relatively cheap to buy ammo, and it's relatively cheap to kind of craft you get to craft the big powerful ammo, but that's about 2 hours in. That's probably too long to start doing that sort of stuff.
Right.
It's a very game of two halvesy sort of thing. It's a frustrating game, I think, more than a bad game. I think you think it's a bad game, but I think it's more frustrating than bad. Because you can see him reaching and kind of falling over a lot.
Yeah, I guess I would argue that frustrating for me is bad.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think it's bad. I think it's just...
I think it's a game that had, like you said, you see what they were going for and they weren't able to pull it off. And in my opinion, that's a sign of a game that's not very good. Like it didn't achieve what it was going for. Like that's what the baseline of what a game is supposed to do, right? You see what it's going for, and did it pull it off? No, it didn't, or it did pull it off. And you know, you may disagree with some of the mechanics of the game, but if at least it pulls off what it was going for, then you can respect it on that level. But I feel like the goal and the where Rage ended up landing in terms of like reaching that goal post were not where it needed to be. And that kind of goes to extends a little bit more into the problems that the PC version had and still has to this day, which is, one of the big things was the technology that they built this on, this IdTech 5, which is, I don't really know all the details of it, but the basics of it is supposed to be like the world is this big streaming texture that keeps coming, like loads in dynamically, as opposed to each individual textures loading in individually. And this was kind of like their first crack at it. And this tech, not so much with the latest Doom 2016, but it had problems on PC with Wolfenstein: The New Order, even, and it definitely has problems with this game, where around, like, textures are loading in constantly. You know, this isn't something new. Like, Unreal has had issues with this in the past, where, you know, textures would load in, you load in a level, and then the textures would load in or something like that. But this is like happening constantly. Every time you turn around, every time you you point your gun at the sky and then look down, the textures are loading in, and it has a detriment to the performance as well. You can tell that it's trying to load in these textures too quickly. The Hagar settlement in particular, I had really bad performance issues, and like I looked up all sorts of different stuff to try and fix it, and I got it working okay, but even still, it's not great. It's not perfect. And you know, this is a game that is a first-person shooter. So you're gonna be turning quickly. You're gonna be whipping your head around. It's the way that these games are supposed to be played. So having these textures load in on the edges constantly, and sometimes not load in at all, is noticeable. It's like it totally pulls you out of it, and just doesn't look good.
No,
And
I've never seen any of that.
well, yeah, I remember when this game came out, I had got it on PC and was so disappointed with it. I ended up picking it up on Xbox 360, and those issues didn't exist on 360.
No.
Like I literally remember testing it out, like whipping the character view back and forth on the PC version, seeing all of this muddy texture load in on the edges, and then doing the exact same thing on the Xbox 360 and not having that issue.
Yeah, lead platform. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Also, the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3. I don't know what the PlayStation 3 version performed like, but you have a baseline, right? You know everybody's Xbox 360 is going to be exactly the same. So
it's bespoke.
Yeah, you can program it. You can use the memory and the processor and the graphics, whatever, in a very specific way in order to minimize all of this kind of stuff. But when you load it into a PC and, you know, this guy has this graphics card, this guy has this processor, there's this guy has this amount of memory over here, but this guy has this amount of memory over here, it starts to become a problem when you're dealing with, especially like this kind of proprietary technology, kind of like first time putting it out there, and it just didn't seem like it was ready for at least the PC space.
No.
Yeah. Especially from what I was like reading around, because I went to look to see, all right, well, this one's been out for a while. Let's see what kind of mods it has. Maybe it has something for better texture now that we're revisiting it or something like that. And what we found were basically updates to that id engine. That I guess eventually they patched it in and made it part of the actual game. So in the end, we ended up not needing it.
Yeah, there was a lot of fan-made stuff, like fan-made tweaks to get this to work better on PC, and you know, just the fact that 7 years later, like our PCs still can't run this game well is kind of like fundamental issue with the game itself. Like, it's not like, oh, it was just ahead of its time or something like that. It's like, no, they had some issues going on. And then to talk about the Wolfenstein: The New Order, I had played all of that game on Xbox One and really didn't notice any problems. Like, I didn't notice any texture issues because it's using the same tech. I believe it's the same version, id Tech 5. Just like, you know, a better looking, more advanced version of it. I didn't notice any problems. Performance was good, and I really enjoyed that game. It was one of the few games that I've got all achievements on. But then I got it on PC for like $8 or something like that. So I was like, oh, cool, I'll play through it again on PC, and it definitely performs and runs and looks better than Rage does, but it still has some of those residual issues where if I'm turning too quickly, I can see these textures loading in on the side. And it's not subtle. Like, it's so obvious that it's happening that no matter how long I played the game or how much I tried to ignore it, I couldn't. So I ended up not playing much of that game on PC. And I don't really know well, I know Doom didn't. I played that game on PC, and that game was fine. That they had that game runs amazing on PC. So they've at least figured it out. They've finally gotten over the hump and got the kinks out. Because that game was certainly a return to form for the studio. Like, that was going back to what made Doom, which was fast paced. precise action and stuff like that.
Yeah, what you're talking about what you just said about ahead of its time. I've said that, and I think kind of people disagree with that. I don't mean it necessarily as a positive. And when I say it's ahead of its time, I mean as in console generation ahead of its time, and not necessarily in a good way. The way it's kind of things they would now be doing seamlessly and blending in together have to be chopped up to fit onto maybe like a 360 system or a PS3 system in a way that you would not get now. That kind of ruin the flow of the game somewhat, I think.
Yeah.
Kind
No,
of the
I
way
agree. I
they
mean,
very much separate the shooting section from the driving sections.
Yeah, they feel like completely different games.
Yeah, and also the driving sections, I feel... Now, I don't think... If you were to take the controls of the cars... And I've also... By the way, I've also got a car that is kind of a lot better than the original car. But I have to do 5 races of that in a rubbish car, which you don't generally want to do. Once you do those 5 rubbish races, you get a nice car. Who wants to do that? That's another problem with the game. But yeah... the car's control, like you would imagine a Borderlands car to control, which is floaty, which is what you want when you have a wide open space like you do Borderlands.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming they designed the driving to be in a wide open space like Borderlands, but they couldn't do it and they couldn't fit it in. So they put you down a corridor, which means you're floating into the walls and everything every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's this feeling of compromise of everything but the shooting sections.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think
it really...
that's a big problem with the game.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it really seems like it could have just done without the open world driving sections at all.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like an extra layer that they didn't really need to have there.
Yeah. It's or maybe they did plan on it being more seamless and it's just they had to crunch. It feels like a lot of crunch in this game. A lot of crunch. There's a lot of kind of shortcuts in everything but pacing, I guess. Very strange.
And then you have...
I still think it's enjoyable.
And then you have stuff like John Goodman's a voice actor in it.
Yeah, and you only see him for the first hour.
Right. Yeah, he's only in there for a short amount of time, but still, like what were their priorities here? You know, like. Going after John Goodman to be the voice actor and get that in the trailer or as a bullet point or something, or
yeah,
I don't know.
Again though, there's that disconnect. You've got John Goodman, who's a great actor, and you've got all these characters that are drawn like you would get in a Borderlands, for instance, that are kind of quirky and random. The sheriff is as quirky as the mayor, but you never get the sense that they connect to each other. So you're just drifting from the vendor to the woman that sells you, with the wingsuit. And they don't feel like they connect. They're just wacky characters, wacky-ish characters that don't feel quite so wacky because the world's not as wacky as the characters tend to be. When you go to the area where you get your sponsorship for your car and you get the guy that's running like the game show Gauntlet, who seems to be so wacky he doesn't fit in the game. Because there's no context with him to anybody else. You're just going to areas and you've got these talking heads giving you... There's no connection. They don't feel like anybody kind of flows into each other. You feel like Tiny Tina knows Roland, for instance, or you feel like Lilith, if you play a Borderlands, you feel like they know each other even though they don't always connect. This one, nobody seems to connect. So there's no reason to drift between or attach to one or the other.
Yeah, well,
the sheriff just tells you to go to the mayor.
Yeah, and Borderlands 2 did a better job of that. The first Borderlands didn't. This feels a lot like the first Borderlands in that everyone's just kind of disparate and disconnected from each other. Whereas, with Borderlands 2, they started to move a little bit more like making it feel like everyone knew each other and was a little bit more connected. But this doesn't. Everybody feels like they're just in their little zone, and that's where they spend like literally their entire life. You never see them walking around or anything. The only characters you do see walking around are people you can't interact with on the streets of Wellspring and stuff like that. Just random people.
Hi. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, it's like it's strange because I went back to this game last year and I kind of felt like I came away with it a little bit more positive than I am now. And I don't know what changed, like why it's different. It doesn't help when it takes me, a whole night to get the game running at a decent performance, without having to turn everything off. Like, I mean, I could have got it to run good if I turned everything down, but then the mud looked like more mud.
Yeah.
So, Derek, when you first loaded it up on PC, were you having performance issues too, or what was your experience?
No, when I first loaded it up, it loaded pretty well. Besides everything being super loud, like anytime that there was a video being played,
Yeah.
it was like it was turned up 300%.
Yeah, like the intro videos, like the
intro
Bethesda
video,
and
the loading in, the little clip they do when you start up the game, super loud. But then you get into it and everything was like regular. When I first started, it looked good, it played good. It wasn't until I really just started going at it that I started noticing all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the textures and the muddiness of it. Wasn't until I really started playing. So kind of if you come in and you're at that like standstill where you're just kind of getting your bearings, it was all right. But then once you start to go is when it starts to like.
Yeah, once you get out in the world, or you start having your own, like you can start moving in your own direction, basically, as you start to see the seams. Yeah, so interesting thing about what you were talking about with the really loud audio. So when you launch this game on PC, there's the regular version and then there's the 64-bit version. And if you load in the regular version, you get that really loud intro video, but if you load the 64-bit, it's not. I don't know which version you were.
I tried in both because I was messing around with their little benchmarking program to see how that was.
Yeah.
And so when you go into the regular version, the 32-bit, it gave me a score of like 400 something. So I was like, sweet. All right, let's hop into the 64-bit and see what happens. And then the score was like 200 something. I was like,
yeah.
The fuck?
Yeah, but it doesn't tell you what a good score is.
No, it doesn't. It's just like, here's red to green. There's no numbers, but green's good.
Yeah, but what is green?
I have no idea.
You just, it doesn't even run anything. You just click this benchmark button and it just gives you a number that has no context. And then this chart on the side where it goes from red to green, but no indication of like what number is green. Like, is 200 good? Or is 400 good? Is 100 good? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, here, it's a PC version. PC people want their benchmarks in a game. Here you go. But that's it. That's all the thought that went into it.
Yeah, it was weird. It's the whole thing's weird.
It doesn't render anything. It's just literally click it and boom.
Yeah,
screen with a number.
It has to do with this weird GPU transcoding thing that's in the game, which I think is the reason why over the years the performance has actually gotten worse, because whatever tech was in the drivers of these graphics cards back then isn't anything they care about now today, because it just didn't, like, there's like 5 games in the entire world that use it. And there's like 5 graphical options for PC. Like, that's it. There's like, you can adjust the resolution, you can turn VSync on or off, you can change anti-aliasing,
transcoding on and off,
transcoding on and off, which you don't really know what it does.
Nope, but
and
we'll click it.
the texture filtering, you can go from like nothing to high or something like that, and that's it. And it's just like, come on.
Which kind of, like, just out of curiosity now, I might throw it onto my laptop, because that's about like maybe 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
It's like a first gen, or it's like the end of the i2 series or whatever. So maybe I'll throw it on there and see what it does.
Yeah, maybe it plays better on an older computer.
Right? I got this brand new computer, and old game plays like crap. We go back 7 years, and we've got gold.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
there's a devil's advocate thing. You said how you played it first place, so you were incredibly disappointed with your old PC version, so 360. You tried 360, you had a better experience. You kind of, now you've played it on a much more modern PC and been even more disappointed.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to try a version on the Xbox One X with enhancements? Or has that really stung you too much? Has it really brought the problems to the fore that you won't want to do?
I don't think I enjoy playing the game enough, just in general.
No.
Like if it played well, like if it ran well, I don't think I would. I just don't like playing this game.
That's probably a problem.
Which is how I feel now too. But I also remember when it came out, I fucking loved that game. Like I was so excited for it to come out. Like I can remember I was so excited for it to come out. I was telling everybody about it. Like I remember playing it a lot, playing through everything it had to offer, and now it's just like,
yeah,
yeah.
It just it for me it just didn't age well. Like there's so many post-apocalyptic games. There's so many deserts that we've been in, and there's been so many talking heads that give you missions that there isn't anything here that this game is doing that from today's standpoint is kind of worth going back to, in my opinion. You know, the good things from this game, games have already taken the little good bits out and put it in their games and built better things around it, in my opinion, than what this particular experience has to offer.
The real selling point of it was kind of originally was, look how good the animation, look how well they react. Your enemies react around you. Look at the graphical showcase of not having ragdolls and having them look really nice when they're kind of getting taken out, and it makes you feel like you're in the moment. That's not really special anymore.
Yeah.
Everyone fucking does that now.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really hold the same impact, I guess.
Yeah. So you're going to say, Derek?
I was gonna say, like, one of the things, like with the talking heads and this and that, I love when you get to an area and you're like driving to it, but it wants you on foot, and it's like here's a bunch of yellow posts in the way, like there's all these areas in this post-apocalyptic world, and then don't want anybody to drive here. So
they put out the traffic cones.
Yeah, the traffic cones, the little yellow post. Like, sorry, this was important at this time.
And there's like so many areas where you can, it seems like there's going to be verticality. Like you see a ladder up on top of this catwalk, but you just can't get to it. Like it's too high. And it's like, why is it there? Oh yeah, the map's not very good either.
Lee was dying watching me stream this because I couldn't figure out where to go, and I was trying to pay attention to my dots, and it was just hard to difference. And he was like, he finally like popped into stream so that he could lead me through this area because I could not figure it out to save my life. And I was like, oh, you have to go the opposite fucking way.
The white dot going on and the very, very light blue radar. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Way off from where he's like, no, you come back there later. And it was like all the way backwards, backtrack all the way through this area to make this little turn up a hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one time when the game is seamless with your combat, but there's only because you throw 2 or 3 people at you. Yeah. Because you go from the car and then you shoot a few people and there's like 3 people you shoot. And then you go inside and there's like 4 dozen. But only when you have that door to separate you, that loading door.
Yep.
But thanks. I see your game.
Yeah. Yeah, so for me, like I said, I tried that first Scorchers mission, and then I went on to the second one. And I quit like right at the beginning of that because it was like one of the only points where I'd actually found a ladder. I was like, oh, cool, a ladder. I wonder if there's like a secret way that I can sneak in. And I still don't quite understand why the ladder was there because it doesn't seem like there was a way to navigate any of that and up on top of that roof. But I fell off. It was like a 6-foot roof, and I died. And it loaded me outside of the mission zone. Like, it didn't load me into, like it didn't checkpoint me after I loaded into the mission zone. And I just like, I am not having fun with this at all. This
that
is
is
just,
a big bugbear.
Like when I stopped because I made it up to the boss and the checkpoint was all the way back in the beginning outside that door.
Yeah.
oh my
There's
God.
there's no mid-level checkpoints. You have to do them auto. You have to do them auto. That's so frustrating. I hit that a couple of times as well. That's a massive, because some of those levels can be quite winding and lengthy. And I don't want to have to start where I park my
even
car.
like the quick save, it doesn't give you now. You've got to do like full saves from time to time. Clear room, save.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
or it drops you at your car again.
Yep.
Literally where your car is. It's like, fuck that. No.
And then like that first boss they throw you at was the guy in the turret on that car.
Yeah.
Did you guys get to that?
Yeah, I've gone well past him.
Yeah, I figured you'd.
You have
I
to
don't know if
press-
Derrick did though.
Oh, yeah. You have to press the button on the wall to send the canister across to blow him up. Trying to shoot him. You can shoot him, I think, but you have to kind of...
Oh,
there's
I
a
didn't
flashy
even.
button.
I didn't even notice that. I shot him.
Yeah, you can shoot him, but it takes a lot of ammo because you've got that like wave of enemies constantly coming too. But once I started noticing the canisters, I couldn't keep enough ammo to ignite a canister and take care of the people. So
there's a column there, and it's a beaconing button on the thing, and then there's a pulley system across the roof that shoots a gas canister, and you shoot it as it goes along the rail.
I didn't notice that at all. I guess that's another thing of like, it's just like, but the game doesn't really explain itself in a way that, like, that would be something that I'd even be looking for.
No, not at all.
Like that's
a big problem.
I've talked about it with a number of other games. Is like part of me enjoying games is like figuring out the rule set of the game. Because every game has a set of rules. It's like it's a mindset that the developers in when they made the game or something like that.
Yeah.
And when a game like this comes out that doesn't really have any rhyme or reason to a lot of its design choices and stuff like that, it really has I have a hard time with it because like I'll miss stuff like that. Like I wouldn't even click into my head that there was some sort of environmental way to take out the enemy because where else was that in the game?
And it doesn't. It doesn't happen twice.
Right. It's a one-time thing, and it hadn't happened before. So why would I even think that it was something that the game was going to do?
Did you get to the mission where you're in an underground bunker and you start collecting remote-controlled bomb cars?
No.
That you then send into little holes to blow up arenas and stuff like that. You never use it again. There's never used as a it sets you up as this tutorial to use them, and it never uses it again as kind of something you send into a hole to blow up a system to open a door somewhere. No, it's then just an item you use to blow up some people if you want to see them. And it's like, well, that was a waste.
Cool.
Yeah, that was a waste.
Yeah, I mean, Lee, it sounds like you're a little bit more positive on this. I mean, for one, you played a version of it that didn't have as many technical issues as ours did. But you enjoyed even beyond that, though, right? You enjoy the gunplay and some of the stuff around it.
Once you start because once you start finding the things that benefit you with more money, like I say, the missions you don't realise there are, the bits you add onto the weapons you don't realise, it gets more fun quicker.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't like the driving, but you spend so little driving because it's generally only A to B that it's not a deal breaker for me to do that. It's just an A to B. I'd rather have a fast travel. But I'm in and out my car, so the driving doesn't annoy me so much. But I think if you're willing to give it the goodwill of a couple of hours and starting to get like the decent assault rifles and the sniper rifles and the crossbow and stuff like that, it starts to get a lot more fun to play as a first-person shooter.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much of a horrible panic when they run towards you like lunatics. You can just take them out with a big old beefy shotgun, a double barrel shotgun, and it's fine. It becomes more fun, but it takes too long possibly to show its wares. But
Right.
once it does, if you're willing to give it that chance, and it is not the, this is one thing I will say, as I said, it's not the 4-hour game that everybody said it was.
Mhm.
It's much substantially longer when you start to unlock these other things and find these extra missions that you're not told to look for. So it's worth ploughing. It's not like you're going to play a couple of hours and you're going to be done in a couple more. You're going to get enough benefit from playing it further on. But I think the best thing, I would describe it, if you've got goodwill towards games, if you're willing to give games goodwill, it probably still kind of is worth a go.
Mm-hmm.
If you kind of want something to be more satisfying from an id game from that era, like maybe a Quake 4, it's probably not going to be for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not going to be fun from our dot. So,
well, I was looking back, and Quake 4 is actually made by Raven. That wasn't even an id game.
Wasn't it? Oh,
No.
I did not know that.
Yeah, Raven Software made that. So seriously, it was Doom 3 and then Rage, where it was the lineage of id produced games, and then it was Rage, and then nothing until Doom 2016. So
yeah,
it was pretty obvious that they were having some issues internally that were needed to be sorted out with that kind of stuff. Just to put some into context, Steam records how long you've played a game, like from the very first time you've launched it. And it says I've played Rage for 24 hours, which would include probably the 2 hours I played last year, when I revisited it, and probably like 2 or 3 from this year. So all in all, that the original playthrough of that game for me was probably like, I don't know, about 18 hours, maybe 20.
Yeah.
And speaking of like time of the game too, the world record for speed run is 1 hour and 27 minutes, which is kind of long, because usually like games now we're seeing like 45 minutes, 30 minutes for like speed runs of stuff. So
yeah, depends. I guess
that,
it depends what they're taking advantage of.
Yeah, like a lot of them are like the fastest one is 1 hour and 27 minutes, and then after that it's like almost 2 hours, 1 hour 48, 3 hours on another one that tried it. So it's definitely got stuff there.
Yeah, it's one of the few things with the game that you could say was probably an unfair criticism first time round.
Yeah.
It's not this 3-4 hour tech demo that everybody complained about, so don't touch it, don't bother buying it. So I remember very much that being the rhetoric. It's not worth the money it is for the amount of length it is. So you can levy a lot of the other things we said it being an issue, but that is definitely not one of them. But who cares if you're not having fun?
Well, yeah, and like I remember when it came out, I was disappointed in the length. And I just don't understand how I, like, looking back on it, like, how did I spend that much time in here? Like, how did it take me 18 hours to play this game that I felt like was over in a heartbeat? And I don't understand. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at how long to beat, and the average is 11 hours for the main story. So maybe I took longer than most.
It may be because you keep revisiting the same areas. They keep sending you back into the car workshop. So it didn't seem like you was playing it for as much. They do keep sending you into the same back into the same layers.
Yeah, I felt like that would have made it seem longer. Like if I just keep retreading the same area or something like that. I don't know. It's strange. I remember it ending abruptly as well.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember them saying that.
It was like, oh, okay, it's over.
Yeah.
So whatever. Yeah, I guess so. From what I could tell, the two games, this and Rage 2, kind of don't have a whole lot in common. Maybe the setting a little bit, but it looks like a completely different approach to the combat and the level design and the vehicle sections and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that in the same way that Prey ended up being a kind of a big departure from its original game, that this is also Rage 2 is going to be a little bit of a departure, maybe feel a little bit more like not so many separate parts, which it could still be an issue because we are having 2 studios working on it, but I'm hoping that they communicate and make the open world driving and the first person shooting feel like the same game. It's just so weird that they weren't able to, like, Rage wasn't the first game to have third person driving in first person combat. Like Halo did it like almost a decade before, and that felt right. That still feels right even today, and I just don't understand why it feels so weird in this. And if
I
you
guess it's just something they never tried before.
I guess so. I don't know.
I don't think they ever did anything like sort of a fast-paced in the moment driving game.
Yeah.
Or that sort of controlling game.
Well, I mean, neither did Bungie.
Yeah.
And like the template was there. Like they didn't have to reinvent the wheel, to make another pun. Like I wonder if it's like, so when you jump in the Warthog in Halo, it controls so completely differently than not only any other vehicle that you've probably played in a game before that, but including the actual first person combat, right? And I almost wonder if, like, because it's feels so completely different, you almost accepted it more, whereas with this game, the vehicle controls almost feel a little bit too much like the first person controls, so you're kind of expecting it to control a little bit more precisely and better than it does, but it's just a little bit off. I don't know, it's strange.
Here's a little snippet for you. There's been a lot of preview kind of builds going around for Rage 2. There's been quite a few respectable people doing playthroughs of it, and they're saying they're playing PC, obviously PC builds of it. The first person shooting stuff feels incredibly good with the keyboard and mouse. Apparently the driving is terrible with it, so they've not really actually solved anything. Apparently driving does not feel good with the keyboard and mouse at all.
Well, I think that's never going to be something that feels right, ever.
That'll be something that turns up. There's also something that highlights the difference between two people playing building the same game. I guess
No. I don't ever think driving will ever feel right on a keyboard and mouse.
Do you not? I've never done it. I don't touch it.
No, it's no.
Yeah.
It's because the keyboard is a digital input, so it'd be like, imagine driving in Forza with the D-pad or something like that. There's no nuance to the controls, whereas if you have the triggers and if you have the analog stick, you can make subtle movements. So it's never going to feel right on a keyboard. I mean, there's certainly things that they can do to make it a little bit better, but it's never gonna feel right. I'm planning on
off the gas and stuff. Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna play Doom Eternal when that comes out on a keyboard and mouse, because I don't think there's gonna be any driving in that game. If there is, I'd be surprised. But this game, I'm probably gonna get on PC, but I'm gonna use a gamepad with it. Rage 2. I'm probably gonna play a gamepad.
I hear that's recommended.
Yeah.
Very much recommended is the.
So yeah, I mean, going back and replaying this hasn't really changed my outlook on Rage 2. I still think that that's going to be a pretty good game. And I think it's going to be, it's not going to, at least for me, be as disappointing as the first game was, and to an extent still is. So I hope it pans out. Because that's coming out. That's middle of next month, right?
Christ, really? Already? Oh,
yeah.
lovely.
Yeah.
I think it's the 17th,
Oh, splendid.
somewhere around there. So that's
14th.
14th.
There we go.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's one of those rare Tuesday releases, which are
Indeed.
which are more rare than they usually are. Yeah. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go and revisit this, just to kind of get a perspective on it. I'm gonna play some Doom 2016 again, just to get a feel for that, because I haven't really gone back to that since it came out. And yeah, then certainly next month when Rage 2 comes out, I think we're all gonna be picking that up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, absolutely. That's a kind of a day one for me.
Yeah.
I like the look of the Doom 16 style flow, ebb and flow of it.
Yeah. Some of those powers look really cool too. Like,
yeah,
it's giving me which I didn't play too much of it, but a look and feel of like a Bulletstorm, where you're kind of like building up these combos almost and shooting. It doesn't seem like it's calculating points like Bulletstorm did, but the way you can chain together the abilities and the shooting and stuff is giving me a feel of that. And if Bulletstorm was, for what little bit of it I played, was okay, but it ended up kind of being kind of like Rage in a way. It ended up being a little bit one note.
Yes, novelty
in the combat. Yeah, once the novelty wore off, it wasn't as fun to pull off these combos as it was at first.
There's a specific gun I've seen in the new one, which is kind of a magnetic dart gun. So you shoot multiple magnetic darts into your enemy, but then if you aim towards a metal structure, it drags them towards that. When you kind of almost like a portal gun in a way. Kind of it sucks them up into where you. Yeah, that looks interesting.
Yeah, it's like a bunch. You can imagine it like you're attaching a bunch of grappling hooks to a bunch of enemies, and then you're kind of like launching them all into one direction. I even saw you could just
cause the FPS.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Oh my god, they're doing it. As if you could even just shoot it off into the distance. Like you don't even have to shoot it into a wall. You can just like shoot it way off into the distance, and it just pulls them flying way out there, and you don't even have to worry about them anymore.
Poot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and what they really haven't showed too much, at least I haven't seen, is like what you're going to be doing in the open world, other than like coming across convoys and stuff like that. I don't know if there's going to be much to explore out there, or if it's going to be kind of like, or how you're even really getting your missions.
Same way. I've seen some of the footage as well. A character from the first one come back in the second one. You see the girl, the crow glaive woman. You see her as a much older woman in this new one, giving you missions. Yeah.
But is it? But is it like? Is it like the old way where they're just kind of like occupying a space and you go up to them and they never move?
Looks like it. It does look like it. It kind of looks like you go and visit them when they give you the missions, and then you go off and do your thing. But yeah, it's them. I think so. It looks like it's set about 20 years later because she's a lot older woman.
Okay, that's a little bit disappointing.
I
like seeing characters move around, like as if they're actual real characters moving around the space and doing things, as opposed to just like that wing stick woman literally just leaning up against that pole the entire game.
Oh. Well, I'm saying that they may do. I've only seen kind of you converse with her. I haven't seen the in and the out of the scene.
Oh, okay.
They might be walking around, so it might be kind of that. But you do go to see these people.
Okay.
So,
yeah, that's one thing I'd like to see a little bit more life out of that. Like, so it doesn't feel like all of these locations are just mission dispensaries, kind of.
Yeah.
And that's the extent of it. Even if it's just you go in and it launches a cutscene or something, is a little bit more than just going up to a counter and talking to this guy that's been standing behind it for what feels like 30 years or something.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else we want to touch upon before we close it out?
Mm-mm.
I think we about covered it with that.
Okay. We've got Days Gone coming here at the end of the week. I know Derek, you're interested in that for sure.
Yep. Yeah, I'll be on there Friday night.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I'm holding out to see what the reception is before I jump in on that, but I'm up for a semi-interesting open world as I always am, so I am a little bit interested in it. I know some of the early word has not been super positive, but we'll see, I guess.
At least got a polished experience.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. And I'm also looking
anything
into Mortal Kombat.
Right,
Mortal Kombat is today, right now,
right.
I believe.
Yes. The 23rd, right?
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
Which is, wink, wink, the day we record this. Wink.
Good Lord.
Well, actually, for you, it probably is, right?
It is, yeah. It's been
it's been the 23rd.
You've got it coming up in about an hour. It should be ready.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's getting some pretty good word of mouth going on around it.
Oh.
Guess it's got a pretty good single player, like at least a single player story.
They've been good for a few now, since at least 9. They've really kind of got into doing the single player mode. But yeah, be interesting to see how it goes. I'm not the biggest aficionado of fighting games. I know enough.
Well,
but
one of the things that'll be one of the things that'll be interesting then is apparently the tutorial system has been like revamped, and it actually like tries to help set you up for being that better player.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how it actually translates in the game.
Yeah. It'd be cool maybe to get someone who kind of come on and who's kind of into it and see how much kind of it's changed from the previous ones, and kind of interesting to see if we can get someone on to talk about it. I know enough, but I wouldn't know enough to talk about it properly.
All right, cool. So maybe next time around we'll have Days Gone to chat about and Mortal Kombat. And anything else? Anything else that we have going on? Or is the next thing we're just waiting for Rage 2?
I think there's a couple of things, but they're not massive. I'm about to play a game called Generation Zero. I could probably talk about that at some point.
Oh, boy.
I understand that's been a bit divisive, so I'll be able to talk about how much I did or didn't like that.
Yeah, I'm interested in hearing your
funny
thoughts
if I didn't.
That.
Yeah, probably be more funny if I didn't like it. But there you go. So I'm about to play that soon, very soon.
All right. I guess that's gonna wrap it up then. So, thanks everybody for tuning in on a pretty lengthy episode this session. That's good though. I guess that's what happens when we take breaks here. If you're interested in following us, you can check out the Voxel Voice Facebook group, follow the page, and we're on YouTube as well. It's all just whatever website you're on /Voxel Voice. And if you are listening on iTunes, give us a review so we kind of get bumped up there in the list of video game podcasts. Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Lee, for hanging out.
No problem.
Thank you.
And Derek, real quick, you changed your channel over to something, didn't you?
Oh yes. So I switched off. We're no longer Murder Monkeys Gaming. We are now After Image Creations. We kind of did our farewell thing, and everything's been switched over. We just got a couple like graphics to tweak around, but yeah, it's Twitch /After Image Creations, YouTube /After Image Creations, and then Instagram's the same. And then on Twitter, it's AI Creations, but the E is a 3 because somebody had that.
Okay. All right. But you just kind of switched everything over. So if anybody was following you previously, they just switched over, right?
Yeah, you'll see the new name.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. All right. I guess we're gonna take off. Thanks for listening, and peace.
Thanks, guys.